Welcome to Outrage Overload, a science podcast about outrage and lowering the temperature. What happens when hate becomes your neighbor? When extremist ideology doesn't come with a hood or swastika, but instead hides in plain sight. Hate isn't just wearing hoods and burning crosses anymore. It's adapting and embedding itself into the everyday fabric of our society. One of the most harrowing examples of this transformation occurred on May 14, 2022, in Buffalo, New York, when a young man armed with an assault rifle and a manifesto filled with white supremacist rhetoric entered a supermarket in a predominantly black neighborhood. He murdered 10 innocent people in a calculated act of terror fueled by the Great Replacement conspiracy theory, a belief weaponized to stoke fear and violence against racial and ethnic minorities. This tragedy wasn't an isolated incident. FBI hate crime statistics reveal an increase in reported incidents. Crimes targeting individuals based on race, ethnicity, or ancestry make up the majority of hate crimes. Anti-black crimes are notably the most prevalent, occurring more than 3 times as often as those targeting the next highest group. Religion-based crimes are also on the rise, with over half of these targeting Jewish individuals. Anti-LGBTQ+ hate crimes have also seen a significant increase, particularly against transgender individuals. There's a growing organized network of modern hate, facilitated by encrypted chats, social media algorithms, and communities that thrive on spreading fear. But what can we do to stop them? That's what we're going to talk about on this episode of the Outrage Overload podcast. I'm your host, David Beckmeyer, and today we'll meet Matt and Tawni Browning, a couple on the front line of this fight. Matt, a former undercover detective, has risked his life to infiltrate white supremacist groups, documenting their activities from within. Alongside Tawni, the couple has channeled their experiences into a powerful book, The Hate Next Door, Undercover Within the New Face of White Supremacy. This eye-opening work reveals the strategies and systems that sustain modern hate groups, drawing from Matt's time undercover with the KKK, neo-Nazis, border militias, and more. Together they share a deeply personal and professional journey, one marked by both relentless courage and devastating personal costs. We'll discuss their story, the evolving face of extremism, and what every citizen can do to push back against the tide of hate. Let's get to it right now. Matt and Tawni Browning, thanks for making time to come on the show.
Happy to be here.
The American Civil War killed more Americans than any other war. I mean, the Revolutionary War, World War II, and yet we kind of don't. We sort of shove it under the rug in some ways. We don't really keep that at front of mind that happened and that was bad. And yet now you have some of these people, because we don't have kind of a lot of these conversations, the kind of conversation that you're able to have at your dinner table that a lot of people aren't having, that's leading us into this anxiety around the future. We consider these elections existential, and if that person wins, the country's going to be over. And you start seeing people, because of that, going down these paths of being less open to democracy and wanting to, those guys are so bad they shouldn't even exist, or they shouldn't exist in my country. And I don't know, I mean, it's great that you're having those conversations. So how can the rest of us do it? I don't know, wherever you want to take that question.
Oh, I think you just got to do it. I mean, you just do it. Tawni asked me one day, how come all the people you put in jail are in jail? And I said, one decision after another. Life is a series of decisions that we make, a series of choices. And if we choose to have those conversations, then that is a good thing. But also we can choose not to have those conversations, and that's on you, but we have to be able to take whatever comes out of whatever choice we make. And I think that I really, really believe that the dialogue that we put out there, or I'll call my ideology, affects my rhetoric. So what I believe and think will affect the things that I say. Now I have a choice to take those to the next level, to push people to take my rhetoric and turn it into violence. And that's a choice that I make. And that's a choice that leaders make and anybody else makes, is how are we going to make that ideology or the rhetoric a good, positive rhetoric? And, we don't remember the Revolutionary War. We don't remember the Civil War, because people only care about what's in front of their face at this time. But if we look back, we know history repeats itself. And so we just have to do what we need to do.
Mm-hmm. I always think about a lot when I was reading through your book, and it was kind of that idea of that saying about sort of hurt people. And I mean, you must kind of get that from the folks that you were able to interact with, that they kind of ended up there partially because like somehow they're hurt pretty badly in some way.
Yeah.
I call that broken parts, trying to figure out how to manipulate and move so that they can, for survival. But the thing that really got me when I got into this is I really did expect them to be backwoods. I even have just objectified them to be backwoods, knuckle dragging, can't string two sentences together type folks. And I found, whoa, does your mom know that you're doing this? I found some of these guys that I was talking to were very intelligent. They spoke better English than I had, a better vocabulary than I did. And I found them both frightening and fascinating. How did you get here? And then I was frightened for my own kids and that were growing up. How will I protect them from an intelligent human like this with a very, very evil agenda?
Yeah, and able to really know that how that propaganda works and how to do that manipulation. I mean, that scares me a lot too. That you don't have, like, it's such a misconception that you're somehow dumb and that's how you fall for this stuff, and that's just not right.
No, there's guys whose parents were lawyers, brain surgeons.
Yeah, the brain surgeon one got me.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys are extremely successful in their fields, whether they went to college or where they went to trades, it doesn't matter. They're successful. They just have this somewhere, somehow, somebody put this seed, this ideology in their head, and it just grew from there.
I found that most of them found a belonging, a home, a family, even if they had a quote good family at home. I mean, there was just something that drew them, and I came to the conclusion, look, we've got to get to these kids before, if they're looking for something, we got to get to them first, get that lacrosse stick, get a paintbrush, something, so that they choose that instead of hate.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think, and I don't know, and I can be wrong on this, but I'm curious to hear what you think about this. But I get the sense that, there's definitely a hurt among the right, I think, more than anything right now, because they kind of feel like Hollywood's turned on them and the media has turned on them, and sort of academia has turned on them, and like I said, there's, like you're kind of talking about, there's not a lot of home, and and every night, Jimmy Fallon and all those guys basically attack half the country, basically, and we're all sort of okay with it. Nobody calls them out for it. And it seems like all of those are kind of factors in this as well.
Well, social media, what we hear and see on TV is huge. How my kids perceive my reception of what I'm watching on TV. If I end up yelling at the TV because of something, my kids will do the same thing. Yeah, you're right. But I do believe that it's not just the right; it's the left also. I mean, if you go to the left, on the right, you got your extremes. On the left, you have your extremes. You have all your different organizations and people. And I think both sides are so confused about what's really going on. And that's the problem. If we just come together and have the conversation, then we can come up with our own solutions and pick and choose what we want to do. Then I think that's when the guys that do the late night or talk shows or anything else, get them on board too, because you can still have a conversation without busting on somebody.
There's so many incentives to have this divided environment, right? There's so many folks that can leverage that.
Tawni's preached this, all my dealings with hate crimes and skinheads and racists and all these other religious fanatics and everything else. Tawni's always kept it very simple. Just love them. Just love your neighbor. Go back to a religious setting, or be kind, or do unto others, or whatever it is. And if doesn't matter if you're religious or not, but if you're nice to somebody,
those are universal principles. And I know they sound trite, but there's power in just being kind. There really is. For the most part, we want to have dialogue and talk and learn and get this right for us and for our kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is hard because those extreme voices, and there's, like I said, there's so many that sort of benefit or can weaponize this division, right? So the politicians do it, social media does it, TV media does it. There's so many folks that kind of like it this way because it simplifies things, it oversimplifies things, and creates this fake narrative that all those people on that side think this and they're all bad or they're good, whichever side you're on, and all those people over here think that. And it's not the reality, right? The reality is far more complicated and more complex. And as you say, the only way you discover that is when you actually go talk to real people and aren't influenced so much by this caricature that we're presented all day long, right? Um, so, I always another thing I kind of talk about, and this doesn't come up on the show very much because it's such a difficult topic to figure out how to work in, but it's kind of an elephant in the room, is sort of the racism side of this, right? I mean, I know that's not the only type of group that sort of infiltrated or worked with, but it's a big one out there. I mean, there's several of these large, and it seems to be a track that can draw people in.
Yeah, I think what happens is hate encompasses race, ideologies, religion, sexual orientation, nationality, all these different things come into it. And once we can break down, okay, this person, I call them haters because it just is easier. This hater hates these people because of his religious upbringing, not because it's a Southern Baptist church or it's Catholic or whatever, because what he was taught. These people over here, they hate because of like the immigration problem we have going on, to where they hate the Mexicans coming across. So now they hate Mexicans, and it's an immigration issue. So I think we really need to. Oh man, if I could say, we need to change our way of thinking to take it away from race and really get to the problem, because when you throw race into it, you're not solving anything. Because check this out. There's guys in the organizations that I was a member of that were Hispanic and Black, but we all hated the Mexicans. So I can band
Which was
together.
so I was like, where is the logic in that? He said, stop trying to understand it, Tawni. I said,
Right.
just help me understand. Just don't even try to understand it. But I'm like, how can these Hispanic people be hating the Mexicans? I just don't get it. And
Well, why are there Mexican anti-immigration people going down to the border, parts of militias? Well, because they're not Mexican, they're American. And they're born in America. They're American, and that's how they see themselves. Race has nothing to do with it. They're patriots. There are all these other words that they use, but they hate the Mexicans coming into the country. So it's really a weird topic, and it's a great question. But if you take race out, what's the real reason why you don't like these people? And it's going to go back to, you were beat up by a kid, by a group of guys, or you got beat in the championship basketball game, or you got beat up here, or you were bullied there, or your parents taught you something else. So let's work on that stuff, and let's just take the race card out.
Matt used to always say, I can't even believe I'm going to say this because I think it's too simplistic and I think that it might be taken wrong, but here we go. He used to always say, give these guys a job and a girlfriend and we're good.
Always good.
And I thought that was just almost misogynistic a little bit, but then I watched it happen, and I watched my own work. And once you gave them somebody to talk to, someone that might understand them a little bit, everything changed. And that goes back to love.
And something that, like, yeah, no, it actually makes a lot of sense, to be honest with you, right? But even though, obviously probably there are situations where it's oversimplified, but I mean, for a lot of it, I think there's a lot of truth to it, right? Because if you have sort of a career and you feel like you sort of get that self-respect from that can be a big help. And like you say, if you have this partner and you kind of get this purpose together, and I think those are real things. I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's probably a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
I watched it, I wish that it wasn't necessarily, I mean, I don't know if it should be true or not. I just felt like, but I watched it and there was merit to it.
So you were mentioning, for a lot of these folks, there was kind of like a personal experience of some kind in their life. Oh, my uncle lost his job for this, or this happened here. Do you find that to be a really common thread, that for a lot of these folks, if you keep drilling on it, you get to something like that?
Oh, for sure. It goes back to, I wrote about it in our book, is that my first undercover experience with these people, I had no backstory. I had no backstory at all to go on. And when I did, I went and sat with them and talked to them, and I listened to what they're saying, and I took their stories and created my own backstory. And my backstory is because, I told everybody I owned a landscaping company, and all the Mexicans that worked for me, because it was cheap labor and all this other, baloney. And they stole all my tools and my trucks and trailers and went back to Mexico. And because of that, I became a racist. I hated the Mexicans. And there has to, in order to not like somebody, something has to happen. There's got to be a change. There's got to be something. You have to hear it from a parent, a family member. You have to be attacked by a group of people. There's something that's happened to these people in their life for them to cause such. And with me, I mean, shoot, locked up 19 guys for murder or attempted murder just in Arizona. There's a lot of hate going around in Arizona, but what was the root cause of it? Some of them was upbringing. Some of it, they didn't make the baseball team. There's all these different excuses for it. There will always be an excuse for why they belong to these organizations, why people join gangs. And if we can just solve that, the world would be a better place.
Yeah, some of it really was really, really poor parenting, though.
Oh, horrible.
I mean, but not as much as you think.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's no easy quick fix here for this, for sure.
It is simple. The solution is simple. And
what is the solution?
All right, here I'm gonna break the solution down to you really easily.
Because I'm ready for this too.
Two things: watch what you say and be kind. Now, when you watch what you say, that goes to our politicians, that goes to our leaders, that goes to our churches, that goes to everybody. Watch what we say. Being kind. If we be kind, we're not going to hate. If we be kind, we don't want to shoot a person. We don't want to beat a person up because of the color of their skin. We don't want to go down to the border and shoot immigrants as they come across the border. That's the two things. But the problem is, in my mind, that's why I created the Supremacist Intelligence Network, is to bring police officers in from all over the world and create this world-changing philosophy. It doesn't happen. It's too big. We got to bring it down to our family, our communities, and our states, and that's where it starts.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the story that you have, I mean, folks should really get the book. I mean, it's fascinating. It's kind of scary, but it's pretty fascinating. And I'm glad you're okay.
Well, I really, when we were writing it, I was wishing that every coach, every mental health professional, and teachers especially could read the book and maybe discuss it with their students, because I think there's a lot of value in having that dialogue and that discussion, and it's a good place to start.
Yeah, I mean, I do love that name. I mean, the hate next door is so true. Like it's just here. Like, you can't pretend like this doesn't exist all around.
Yeah, and that's why.
Left, right, or down the middle, the hate is next door, and we can't run away from that.
It got to the point where we go to the grocery store, go to church, go to sporting events, go to whatever it was, and there was somebody had arrested, somebody had the markings, the tattoos, the t-shirts, whatever, of a white supremacist or an extremist or whatever it was. And so it's about awareness, and like you said, I think I'm lucky I'm alive after going through all that stuff, but a lot of that has to do with Tawni and how she helped me stay alive. And, the story's there, read it and do what you want to do with it. Hopefully you do something good.
Yeah. Make your own decisions.
Yeah. So have you had any success in sort of trying to get this in some curriculum somewhere?
We haven't even tried that way, but Matt has been teaching high school students for a long time, so that's been very, very successful. Some of those different but they'll fill an auditorium, and the kids don't want to leave, and so people are like, this would be a really hard thing to teach, and it's like, no, it's actually not.
For sure. Well, I really appreciate you making the time. I really enjoyed meeting you, Matt and Tawni. And if we get a chance maybe to chat again, we can really drill down maybe on some of those exciting stories. Maybe I can do that as a separate segment, kind of a side segment that we talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it.
Really, there's just something we uniquely are all able to do to fight hate and make our world better. There really is.
I love the hopefulness, so I bring that on.
Well, we've lived it, we know it, and we've seen people get out, and we've seen success in just that way. So,
Oh, that's great to hear. All right, well, thanks again. I really appreciate you making the time.
You betcha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
okay, bye.
That is it for this episode of the Outrage Overload podcast. For links to everything we talked about on this episode, go to outrageoverload.net. If you enjoyed this episode, if you found it interesting, please tell some friends about it. Post it to your social media. Better yet, text someone. Even better, talk to someone in real life. Tell them about this show. I really appreciate it. Okay, see you in a week or two.